Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining me here today. I'm on Treaty 6 territory, and I also recognize the Métis people of Alberta who share a very deep connection with this land. I am Sarah Hoffman. I'm the Deputy Leader of Alberta's NDP, and I'm proud to be here today on behalf of our leader, Rachel Notley, and our 38-member Alberta NDP Official Opposition Caucus. When sworn in, we will be the largest official opposition in Alberta's history. And as you can imagine, the government didn't consult with us on the timing of today's swearing-in ceremony for the cabinet. And I know that our leader is looking forward to addressing the media and all Albertans at our caucus meeting next week in Calgary. I must say on behalf of our caucus, I am deeply disappointed in many of the decisions announced today by Danielle Smith. Her 25-member cabinet includes just 5 women and just 3 racialized Albertans. And what I find particularly startling is that not a single newly elected MLA is in her cabinet. This is a government that lost a significant number of seats in the election. They lost the popular vote in both Calgary and Edmonton. And the exact same characters are continuing to call the shots. Danielle Smith has decided the best move for the minister who completely neglected our K-12 schools for 4 years, leaving them 2,000 teachers short of where they should be, and implementing a horrific curriculum, is to move her to health, another critical area of the government that's being left in crisis. And speaking of K-12 schools, Danielle Smith has decided that the best move for a minister who hiked the cost of tuition on students and devastated our post-secondary schools with generational cuts is to move him to the responsibility of K-12 education. And Danielle Smith has decided that the minister turned non-minister who completely neglected our eastern slopes and tried to sell off our parks rather than care for them should now be responsible for caring for seniors and some of the most vulnerable Albertans. And Danielle Smith has decided that the Indigenous Relations Minister should remain in his post despite completely failing to consult with Indigenous leaders on her job-killing, treaty rights-violating Sovereignty Act. There is no Labour minister. No minister with a clear responsibility for fighting climate change, something I think that Danielle Smith could really benefit from given her comments over the last 2 days. No one is responsible for the Francophone community. No one has been identified as the housing minister. I could go on and on. The point is, very little has changed, and I fear what that means for our province under this government. But here's the message I want to offer to you Albertans. The Alberta NDP official opposition is here for you. We are already working hard behind the scenes not only to be the best official opposition in Alberta history, the largest and most effective. We are going to demand that more is done to save you money this summer when your utility bills and the cost of everything from groceries to rent continues to remain at or near record highs. We're going to demand protection for pensions for Albertans' retirement security. We're going to demand an emergency rehiring of teachers to support students returning to schools this fall. And we're going to immediately convene at on our discussions with frontline healthcare workers about how to actually end the crisis in our hospitals, our clinics, and on our ambulances. We're also going to propose more measures to create jobs and secure our economic future. We're going to demand real pressure on critical projects We are going to demand real progress on critical projects like the South Edmonton Hospital and the Red Deer Hospital, as well as desperately needed schools, transit, and more. And my friends, we're just getting warmed up. We also want to hear from you. Many members of our caucus will be touring the province in the weeks and months ahead. All 14 of our Calgary MLAs will be at the Stampede to engage with people. Yahoo! And we will be reaching out in a significant way to rural Albertans. We know we'll still have much more work to do to connect with people where they're at, and we're ready to do it. We take our job as official opposition seriously. We are focused on you, and we will hold this government to account and continue to demand a better future for all Albertans. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9. We'll start with questions in the room.
Hi there, Jeremy Thompson, CTV News Edmonton. I'm just wondering, as a former health minister yourself,
Yeah.
I guess how concerning is Adriana LaGrange's history with anti-abortion groups in, entering into that role?
I think all Albertans have a right to be very concerned about that. This isn't something that is a history either. This is something that she still is actively working on to try to erode the rights of women and all Albertans to make decisions about their own bodies and whether or not they get pregnant, and if so, what happens during that pregnancy. So I think Albertans have every right to be concerned about her history and her presence when it comes to decisions around women's reproductive health.
And just, you mentioned a number of portfolios that don't have sort of the usual representation. Can you just sort of hit those again and sort of some major concerns of why they're of particular importance?
For sure. Thank you very much. So climate change is one right off the top of my head. I think the remarks that we've heard from the Premier over the last 2 days, trying to say that the reason why we have the worst wildfire season ever is because people throw cigarette butts out their windows. They shouldn't throw cigarette butts out of their windows. They've been doing it always. But the scope and scale of the wildfires is much more significant now than it was when I was a kid, than it was even a few years ago. And a big part of that is because of the effects of climate change. So the Premier, I think, could benefit from having a minister responsible for climate change. I think she could use some advice from experts in this area, and I think all of Albertans would benefit from having somebody around any government table focused on that. We certainly had it when we were in government, and would expect that Albertans should be receiving that same level of focus on that issue. Another one I want to touch on is affordable housing and homelessness. We are in a state of crisis, I would say, in many communities throughout our province, and not naming somebody specifically as being responsible for homelessness or affordable housing, I think is a real testament to what Danielle Smith sees as important and not important issues. And I think housing is important to most Albertans, and they want a government that will address the housing crisis. There were more, but those are two off the top of my mind. Of course, yeah, thank you. Yeah, labor is, of course, another significant one. We saw under the last UCP government that they took away overtime pay, but we haven't seen an increase to minimum wage in 4 years. There are a number of issues that a dedicated labor minister should be focused on.
Thank you. We'll go to the phones now. Lisa, your line is open.
Hi, Sarah. It's Lisa from the Journal. Thanks for taking my question. This is kind of not really related to the cabinet announcement today, but I'm hoping to get your general reaction because it's been a few weeks now since the Ethics Commissioner's report came out. It came out in the middle of the election.
Right.
But we haven't really had a chance to get some of the details going forward on that until today. And today the Premier said that she would follow through with the recommendation to put MLAs through training on the structure of Canadian governments. I guess I'm wondering what your general reaction is to that.
The Premier needs training on the structure of Canadian governments and what's in her area of responsibility and what is a breach of the public trust and an infringement of the rights and responsibilities of all Albertans. And she's clearly crossed those boundaries, at least this time that we know of through this full investigation. But absolutely, we welcome all MLAs and folks who work in the public service as well should have proper education when it comes to their roles and responsibilities and the fact that they should not be interfering in the justice system.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
Yeah, just a follow-up. What kind of sanctions, like we're waiting for the Ethics Commissioner to recommend sanctions in the fall. What kind of sanctions do you think would be appropriate? I mean, obviously during the election, we heard a lot of people say that this was a disqualifying factor for the Premier. But going forward, now that she's the Premier, what sanctions do you think would be appropriate?
Well, the Premier broke the law. That was pretty clearly stated in that report, and with that should come some significant consequences. I'm not an expert in that area, so we'll definitely leave that up to the Ethics Commissioner and others to be able to come up with some appropriate ones now that she has been re-elected. Obviously, she is the Premier, but she did break the law, so there need to be some consequences for that.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller. Michelle, your line should be open.
Hi, Sarah. I want to ask you a question about where your leader has been. Like it's been almost 2 weeks since the election, and I'm wondering why we haven't heard from her.
Yeah, thanks for the question. She would love to be here, but they didn't consult on the timing of their swearing in, so she isn't able to respond today in person. She's spending a few days with her family, rightfully so. She's a very proud mom and is excited to spend some time connecting with her children and her spouse, and she will be available next week when we have our caucus meeting in Calgary to answer questions of the media.
Do you have a follow-up, Michelle?
But I'm not asking about today, Sarah. I'm asking just in general. Like, it's been almost 2 weeks since the election. So why hasn't she talked to the media? Why hasn't she talked to anybody? We haven't heard from her at all. That really seems unusual.
She did spend a few days, of course, working with our staff to take down the campaign. There's a lot of work that goes into building it up and to taking down, and then she's spending a little bit of time with her family. She has made a lot of time sacrifices over the last, the election period, but frankly over the last several years, and spending a little bit of time with her family before we're together in Calgary next week as a caucus, and she will very happily take questions from the media at that time. Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. We'll go to the next caller. Dean, your line should be open.
Thanks. Hi, Sarah. Hope you can hear me.
I can.
Just wondering about a shadow cabinet. What discussions have you had? Do you expect to make an announcement soon? And you're kind of in the enviable position of having more critics than there are portfolios now. So what are you going to do about that?
Yeah, we're excited. We have 38 fantastic MLAs. Everyone has different skills and talents, and I'm sure Rachel's thinking through where everyone would be best suited to make the strongest team possible. So it's typical that you'll wait for a cabinet to be sworn in before you start thinking about how to slot your critics. I have a feeling we'll have maybe a few more critics than we do ministers, because as I've mentioned today, labor, housing, climate change, these are areas that absolutely should have been in the government cabinet. They're not, but I suspect that Rachel will want to put those in as areas of focus within our own caucus when it comes to critic areas. But she'll have more to say on the timing of that next week.
Do you have a follow-up, Dean?
Yeah, and so it looks like the Premier has not said this, but she's definitely downplaying this Council of Edmonton defeated candidates to advise her. Sounds like she's going to use councillors and area cabinet ministers. What do you think about that?
Well, there's about 20 of us in Edmonton who were actually elected who want to be, we are going to give her advice. Let's be frank. We were elected by Edmontonians to stand up for them and the issues that matter to them. So we're going to be fighting for a new Stollery Children's Hospital. We're going to be fighting for more high school and elementary and middle school space in and around the city of Edmonton. We're going to be standing up for better transit, including getting the trains that have been constructed moving and making sure that the other transit lines get finished. She has people who were elected provincially to stand up for Edmonton, and we are absolutely going to do that. If she wants to do it in a sit-down behind closed door meeting, we're certainly welcome to do that as well. We would welcome that opportunity, but we are absolutely going to be standing up for the people of Alberta, no matter what Danielle Smith says or who she wants to listen to. We are going to fight for Edmonton.
Thanks, Dean. We'll do one more pass for questions in the room. Yep.
Hi, it's Safe Kaiser, Global News. I'm just wondering, I was on the NDP website just trying to figure out sort of the standard operating procedure if a leader loses, and it seems like it does trigger a leadership vote. I'm just wondering if you could explain that process a little.
Yeah, thanks, Safe. I believe the Constitution reads that at the next convention following any election. And I know that that's what we've done in the past under the last two elections. We've had a leadership review.
Right, and just to kind of go back to what Michelle was saying earlier, why is it we have not seen Rachel Notley at all? I mean, we saw Danielle Smith right away. We see you here now today. We haven't seen her at all. It's been 2 weeks. That isn't normal for an opposition leader.
Yeah, I think we're on day 10, so not quite. She definitely was on the media less than 2 weeks ago on election night, and it's important that she gets to spend a little bit of time with her family. This has been a very focused campaign, and we're so grateful for all the sacrifices with her time and that she and her family took. She thanked them on election night, and I'm glad that she gets to spend a little bit of time with them as we prepare for what's ahead. A 38-member caucus, the largest official opposition in Alberta history. She's going to have her work cut out for her, so I'm glad she's getting a little bit of family time.
Okay, we'll just do one more quick pass for questions. It's a raise hand function. If you're on Zoom, *9. If you're on the phone, one more in the room? Yep, for sure.
I'm just wondering, that while there aren't sort of explicitly climate change and labor portfolios. There are a number of ministers with sort of seemingly adjacent portfolios, you know, in environment and parks and that sorts of thing. Is that sort of not good enough? You know, they'll probably touch on those areas of labor and climate change and that sort of thing, but I guess why is that not what you're looking for?
Thanks. I think if you measure it and if you name it, it says it's important. The fact that they don't name labor, climate change, or housing or homelessness at all says it's not important. So I think that it really speaks to what some of their values are.
Okay, that concludes our press conference for today. Thanks very much.